Well, we're at the United States Supreme Court era of Donald Trump's second time around as president, with cases already making their way and reaching the United States Supreme Court. And now we're watching the pressure on the center. Will the center hold? What is the center? Is Amy Coney Barrett the center? Heaven help us if she is, but it looks like she is. If she votes more with the democratically appointed wing of the Supreme Court, what will be the result? Will she rein in Donald Trump? What was a recent ruling that looks like she may? Followed by another ruling that looks like she won't. We cover it all on Legal AF, the podcast. And here's an After Dark clip.
Over the right before the break, we talked about Amy Coney Barrett, Justice John Roberts, who joined Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Kagan, and she joined Justice Sotomayor. And there was a group of 5 justices in this 5-4 USAID decision that worked its way up from the Washington, D.C. federal court, where Judge Ali, the federal judge, ordered the Trump administration 36 hours. You have to fund the things that Congress already passed laws that were signed into law that were supposed to be funded. There's about $2 billion, $3 billion or so dollars with contracts that were already done. We're not talking about future contracts. We understand that you're in charge now, unfortunately, but there are past contracts and there's food that's rotting. And that food and these services and these products, by the way, these deals are with American contractors. You know, Donald Trump loves to screw the contractors. Donald, pay your contractors the $2 billion. Let them ship red states, blue states, purple states. Let them ship the stuff to where it needs to go right now in 36 hours. And the Trump administration's like, nah, we'd rather let them die abroad and not pay our contractors. Popok, surprise, surprise, the guy, you're fired guy, what does he do? Fires everybody, fires the veterans, fires these people. The guy who's fired people for a living with the catch line. Is this a shock that he's firing everybody who he can actually fire? And the guy who screwed contractors his whole life and has bragged about screwing contractors, screwing the contractors. The screw contractors USAID case goes up to the Supreme Court, and the 5-4 decision says, no, you gotta pay him. Now you're having all these MAGA people saying, oh, Coney Barrett, she's a traitor. She's DEI. That's what you're hearing from MAGA. What do you make of all of this?
Well, yeah, let me break it down for you. The Amy Coney Barrett attack by MAGA is a symptom of a big problem for Donald Trump and the Republicans. It means that she has moved to the center right, and it scares the crap out of MAGA. They're calling her Amy Coney Barrett, and they figured out that she has Haitian adopted children, and this is MAGA. Okay, this is the depraved aspect of that party. That got them elected. DEI judge, why? Because she's a woman. I mean, they loved her when she was slammed in with 38 days to go in the Trump administration to block Biden from having a pick and to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg of all people. They loved her then, but now that she's, as we had hoped, that she would become lifetime appointment as a special superpower for some judges, not all. Some get worse. Gorsuch has moved completely off the grid to the alt-right. Kavanaugh rapidly moving there as well into the orbit of Thomas and Alito and to be their replacements. But Amy Coney Barrett, as we've remarked here on Legal AF, the Legal AF YouTube channel, and on a show I do with Dina Dahl called Unprecedented, we've been mapping and watching the growth of Amy Coney Barrett. The New York Times got around to doing an article on it this week, but we've been talking about it for a long time. She is now, it's becoming the Amy Coney Barrett court, not the John Roberts court. When she joins in the majority, when you look at the votes, she's in the majority on opinions that matter more than the other justices. And it's only going to get better or worse. It helps us because even though she's right of center, she's at least got one foot in the center lane. Just as Sandra Day O'Connor was in the middle. Kennedy, for years, it was the Kennedy court because Kennedy was that swing vote. she's right of those people, and on issues that matter to you and me and our audience, like religious freedom, separation of church and state, things related to reproductive rights, she's sort of on the wrong side of that because of her other theology and her other thinking. But on things that come to presidential power, gun rights, even though she was in a concurrence, she gave Trump the win on immunity. You can see now she's turned and fired on Alito and Thomas and a number of dissents last term coming into this term. And now, not the first time, that she's joined with Roberts to form the 5-person bloc to rein in and hem in Donald Trump in particular. And this is why she's getting attacked by MAGA. That and her face, although I didn't think, to be frank, I didn't think her face was any different than Kavanaugh sitting next to her. They all look like they just ate a bad oyster at some point. We didn't mention here. I know you mentioned it on the Brothers podcast. The most troubling one was the Roberts face when Trump tried to fist bump him, pat him on the stomach and say, "Never forget you." And he looked very, very uncomfortable, probably because he knew the order was coming out any minute now that was going to be against Donald Trump. Now, so here's the way the ruling works. Judge Ali ruled that on the $2 billion out of the $50 billion that of U.S. aid, and I mean that as an acronym, the bureau that was underneath the State Department until Elon Musk shuttered it. That was one of the fights. That was the instigating fight between Marco Rubio and Elon Musk, was that he shuttered and closed USAID before Marco Rubio knew what hit him. And he didn't like that. That was that fight. But of the $2 billion of the 50 or more billion of aid related to, as you said, services rendered, goods already provided, not in the future. So how could they be fraudulent? I mean, they're already done. There was an inspector general that was responsible for things, so they had been ordered to be paid. You and I reported on Judge Ali being emphatic after seeing weeks go by with the Trump administration ignoring effectively his temporary restraining order, ordering that the $2 billion be paid. He finally gave them a week or so ago a midnight deadline to get it done. Trump administration ran to the U.S. Supreme Court after a pit stop with the D.C. Court of Appeals and got Justice Roberts as the emergency judge on a shadow docket to grant an administrative stay, which is the lowest form of stay or injunction that's out there. It's temporary. Could last hours, days, just until something happens. A briefing schedule or a new brief comes in, and the judge said on a Tuesday, Justice Roberts, I'm going to give USAID, the Aid Vaccine Coalition, and others who oppose this, I'm going to give them until Friday to write a brief, and then we'll look at it again. Well, Friday the brief came in. I did a report on it, and after Friday, Coney Barrett and Roberts, with really joining the other three liberals or moderates, said to Judge Ali the following: "All right, I'm gonna paraphrase this. Okay, you're going to be able to order the payment. However, you need to hold a hearing. You need to get through your preliminary injunction process. The date and time has already passed for your deadline. So I want set another deadline, give the government a reasonable amount of time. And if you and what they signaled was, if you do that, you'll have your 5 votes in the future. If you don't do that, you see the wolves over here in the dissent. It was a scathing dissent by Alito. He literally started with, "I am stunned." I'm stunned by the majority having decided that a judge without jurisdiction had the power to waste taxpayer dollars and order funding. I'm like, okay, well, you already set up a straw man because he has jurisdiction. I mean, so you start from the proposition that's wrong, and then, of course, you're off on the wrong foot and you never catch up. By the end, he said, I respectfully dissent and went through this. But what it shows, and when you and I get to the Judge Beryl Howell segment about what she wrote, is what we're watching. And we will watch iterations of this for the next foreseeable future, the next 4 years, is a struggle for the soul of the Supreme Court, and therefore the soul of our constitutional republic, over one issue, existential issue. It's about the presidency. Are we going to adopt and apply the unitary president model, I'll talk about that in a minute, with its limitless, powerful, all-powerful president at the heart of it? Or is that, as legal scholars like Cass Sunstein have said, is that a myth that never really existed in history? Andrew Jackson tried it, but it got rebuffed by the Supreme Court. And so that's the battle. And on the Supreme Court, you've got Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Alito, and Thomas, who believe in the unitary president theory, and that all power, and it's almost limitless, is reposited in this thing called the President of the United States for the executive branch. Whereas the others, and I think that's where Amy Coney Barrett comes in, and probably other Roberts, don't believe in all the aspects of the unitary president theory, and neither does Beryl Howell and the other judges, and believe that there needs to be, in the co-equal branches of government, in the checks and balance system, what Louis Brandeis famously said in 1925 or 1927, that the friction between these moving plates of the three branches is the checks and balance. We don't want frictionless, raw power exercise by the presidency. The friction is our democracy and our constitutional republic. And that there was a quote like that was also in Beryl Howell's opinion. So this is what we're watching. That's why the first 3 pages of Beryl Howell's order about the NLRB had nothing to do with the NLRB and didn't even mention the actual dispute. It just went into, this is the world. We're either into the absolutism of unitary president theory or we're not. And if you're over here, you're going to side with Trump every time. And if you're not, you're going to side with our constitutional republic and the structure of checks and balance. And here's where I am. And then she went on. And that is the fight. And this is why you and I will find it easy sometimes to interpret how the Supreme Court is going to rule. And sometimes we're going to smack our foreheads and say, that's a warped decision. I don't know where that came from, because we're watching this fight. And one of the leaders of the fight, I believe, is Amy Coney Barrett.
You know, Michael Popok, the unitary executive theory may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. It's the stupidest theory I've ever heard of because, and I'm not trying to, just use abrasive language or whatever. I mean, it's just dumb. I mean, our government was created as a reaction to and as a rejection of the monarchy, right? I mean, the French philosophers who in enlightened ways talked about these ideas that made its way into our Declaration of Independence and then our Constitution. They were a reaction to people like, Louis XIV, right? Who would say one king, one law, one faith. So, and monarchs, who were running, who used to rule America like dictators, kings. We were a rejection to kings. So this idea of a unitary president is a king repackaged in the word president, and it's ridiculous. So I say, if by conservative, the mask off moment is that they really meant conserving a monarchy, I just wish these kind of pathetic people, these gaslighters, would just go on and say that's what they really mean, that they look at Kim Jong-un and they look at Xi Jinping and they look at Vladimir Putin, and that their views actually are that in a complicated society, as we head into 2026 and beyond, 2025, as we're here now, it was just too complicated to have democracy. It's too messy. Co-equal branches of government, judicial review, Congress being a check on executive power and being co-equal. Well, this whole thing is just a mess. We need dictators, right, Popok? I mean, that's fundamentally what they're saying. But the same way they got us here by using bullshit frameworks of, I'm an originalist, I'm a strict textualist, and I believe that each word has its important point. Okay, well, what about the second? What about the Second Amendment that talks about regulation?
Wait, what about the wait? I agree with you. The textualism even doesn't work because the role of the Supreme Court in the three co-equal branches of government to declare what the law is and to rein in the executive branch or the congressional branch is nowhere in the Constitution. It's from a case. It's from Marbury versus Madison and Justice Marshall. If he hadn't interpreted not the language because it's absent, the role of the Supreme Court, other than the fact that there is a Supreme Court, there was no owner's manual in the Constitution. There isn't. I defy anybody to go look at it to tell you what it is supposed to do in the co-equal branches of government. It was up to an 1807 case. Before that, they were kind of scrambling, like, I don't know what we do. And now people were like, oh, the Supreme Court said something. Oh, that's interesting, but we're not going to abide by it. It was that case. So I never understand originalism. I never understand textualism because the very existence of the Supreme Court isn't based on text in the Constitution.
These are frameworks, heads I win, tails you lose, types of frameworks, right? I mean, it is a framework created where ultimately you have the outcome already decided, but then you give it a filter so that you don't act like you pre-decided what you want your answer to be. And then ultimately, if one interpretation doesn't work, you just move on to your other framework and your lens, and then you justify it through that. And now they brought us to this point where now they're unitary executive, which they've always been talking about and flirting with. And, and it was discussed in law schools. Oh, the unitary executive this, the unitary executive that. Well, now you have somebody who looks up to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. You have someone who hates our democracy, hates the American history, loves Kim Jong-un, thinks Xi Jinping's the greatest thing, loves Vladimir Putin, and wants to rule as a dictator that America was a reaction against. That's what we have right now. And by the way, a bumbling, fumbling idiot too, a dumbo as well in the White House who's an idiot, who doesn't read his own deals. He gets scared and he goes, oh, the markets are crashing. I guess I'm going to pull the tariffs. I guess I'm going to put the tariffs. I guess I'm going to pull the tariffs. Oh, what a stupid deal. It's your deal, the USMCA. I mean, so now we have idiocracy, kleptocracy, dictatorship, authoritarianism. And they're like, well, to be or not to be, the unitary executive theory, just say what it is. Let's be honest about it. And then we can have a debate and a discussion about it. And I reject authoritarianism. I reject the oligarchs. I don't want to see that here in the United States of America. That's not what our Constitution is. It isn't even a close freaking call.
Welcome back. We named it Legal AF 5 years ago for a reason, and now you know why. Every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you can find it on the Midas Touch YouTube channel and anywhere you get your audio podcasts from. And then, of course, you're here on Legal AF, the YouTube channel that I curate, Michael Popok, in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. And we bring you that intersection of law and politics like no other YouTube channel out there. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. I'm not censored. I speak truth to power. I am vigilant. And we are aggressive in the pursuit of democracy and the rule of law. Not everybody's going to agree with our opinion, but I have one, and I have the right to express it. And those that want to hear how I want to put it, you've come to the right place. Thanks for being part of our Legal AF community. If you're there already, part of the podcast community too, take that clip, send it off to people in your life, and ask them to join our podcast. We're totally word of mouth, organic, don't have outside investors, don't have outside marketing or PR firms with us. We are the marketing and PR firm. So I look forward to you joining us on Wednesday, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel for Midas Touch, where we do that hour-long version of Legal AF. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.